"You're not invited this Christmas," my son said. I smiled, nodded once, and walked calmly to my truck. I made a single call. By New Year's, their mortgage payments had been cut off. Permanently. And that was only the beginning. It was time to right some wrongs. It was time for the entitled to learn just how much they'd taken for granted. What happened next, you won't believe. 2. It had started a few days earlier. I was thinking I could cook the turkey this year, I said, relaxing into the soft leather of Michael's expensive sofa. With the sage stuffing your mother always loved. Remember how she used to say it was even better than her grandmother's? The memory floated between us, fragrant as the vanilla. Scented candles burning on the table. Michael shifted in his seat, the light from their 12th-foot Christmas tree glinted off his wedding band. Then he straightened his back like someone bracing for a blow. "Dad," he said slowly, "you're not going to be invited for Christmas this year." I blinked, not sure I'd heard him right. "What?" He avoided eye contact, his eyes locked on the marble coffee table I'd helped him choose. Last spring, the one Isabella insisted made their living room feel more elevated. "Isabella's parents are visiting," he said. "They think it'd be better if you didn't come." "Better for who?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "It's just easier this way," he mumbled. "You know how her family is. They have traditions." Traditions. I glanced around the room. The silk drapes, the crown molding, the floors I'd paid for with my own home's equity. The house screamed of my sacrifices. My love, converted into square footage and custom cabinetry. "They have their own way." I echoed, "What way is that, Michael?" He winced. "Dad, don't make this harder than it has to be." Through the kitchen doorway, I saw Isabella's state of the art mixer, the one that had cost me a $2,000 and had been used, at most, twice. I asked quietly, "Where am I supposed to go for Christmas?" He hesitated. "Maybe Aunt Rosa's, or we could do something later. The weekend after. The weekend after." As if Christmas were some casual dinner to be postponed. I stood up, knees stiff with years of carrying burdens alone. "I see," I said. I moved toward the front door. Past the family photos, where my presence shrank with each frame, past the coat closet, bursting with Isabella's designer jackets. Hand on the doorknob. I didn't turn around when I said, "Tell Isabella's parents, Feliz Navidad." The cold December air bit my face as I walked to my truck. Behind me, I heard Michael call my name once. Then the soft, definitive click of the door closing. I sat behind the wheel, the house glowing behind me. A house I paid for, but was no longer welcome in. My phone buzzed. Probably Michael. I didn't answer. I turned the key and drove off into the night. 2. The streets of Spokane were quiet. Holiday lights shimmered in the windows of homes where people still gathered without politics or performance. I passed neighborhood corners that held memories of the man I used to be. The man who believed that family was everything, who gave and gave without asking for anything in return. That man, I realized, had been a fool. At a red light, I saw a young father loading gifts into his car, his children pressed eagerly against the window. Once, that had been me and Michael. Before Isabella. Before I became a background character in my own son's life, just a source of cash and uncomfortable truths. The numbers started spinning in my head. 800 per month, every month, for 5 years. I'd stopped keeping track after a while, but I knew the total, over 140,000. Gone, all of it. My wife Maria's life insurance, our retirement savings, even the fund we started for the grandkids. Grandkids I might never meet. I pressed the gas harder than I should have as the light turned green. I passed the bank, where I'd taken out the second mortgage. I could still hear the loan officer's words. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Flores? This is a big risk for someone else's investment." Not someone else, I had thought. My son, my family. It apparently not. When I got home, I parked in the same cracked driveway I hadn't been able to afford to fix. The porch light flickered. Another job I'd been postponing. The house felt empty, without Maria's laugh in it, without the family dinners that used to fill these walls with warmth. My phone rang again. Isabella. Perfect. I answered on the fourth ring. "Dennis," she said, her voice sticky, sweet. "I heard about the little mix-up with Michael." "Mix-up?" I asked, flatly. "Well, my parents are very traditional," she said. "They expect a certain kind of environment. Calm, elegant, refined." I waited. "And frankly," she added, "they're not used to the kind of food you make, all that spice, all that loud music." I said nothing. "They're educated people," she continued. "They want to discuss literature, culture, current affairs. Not, I don't know, flooring installation." Her words landed like punches. But I held steady. "You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years?" I asked. "The tamales you said reminded you of your abuela." "That was different," she snapped. "We were grateful then. Now, with my parents. Now, you can't risk a Mexican man embarrassing you in front of your rich, white family. Don't be ridiculous. It's not about race," she said. "It's about class." She continued. "My father graduated summa cum laude. My mother speaks 4 languages. They vacation in Europe. What exactly would you contribute to dinner conversation?" I didn't raise my voice. "I built a business from nothing. I've employed dozens of people, paid more in taxes than your father ever made. Money isn't everything, Dennis. A breeding matters, education matters." Maria, she understood that. She knew when to stay quiet. That stopped me cold. "What did you say about my wife?" "She just knew her place better than you do. She didn't try to force herself into spaces. She didn't belong." My grip tightened around the phone. My voice, when it came, was low and final. "Maria had more class in one breath than your entire family will ever fake." "Oh, please. She was a cleaning lady. She got lucky. At least she didn't make waves." Something in me snapped. "We're done pretending to be family," I said. "Don't call this number again." I hung up. 2. I stood in the quiet kitchen, my coat still on. The room felt lighter, like I could finally breathe. I walked to my desk and pulled out the folder I'd been avoiding. Mortgage papers, bank statements, all the evidence of 5 years of financial bleeding. Time to stop it. I called the bank. Customer service. This is Jennifer. How can I help? I need to cancel an automatic payment, I said, calmly. She pulled up my account. A 2,800 monthly to Wells Fargo, account ending in 7423, effective when? Immediately, I said. A pause. It's been cancelled, she said. Thank you, I replied, and hung up. The silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, my finances were my own. I could fix the porch light, buy groceries that weren't discount canned soup, maybe even travel. I gathered the paperwork, walked to the fireplace, and fed it to the flames. 5 years of self-sacrifice, gone in orange light. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the one I'd been saving for a special occasion. This was it. I raised my glass to Maria's photo on the mantel, to the man I used to be, to the one I was finally becoming. Merry Christmas to me, I said. And this time, I meant it. The next morning dawned bright and cool. Golden sunlight streaming across my kitchen table as I sipped my second cup of coffee. For the first time in half a decade, I wasn't checking my bank app or counting down the days until another $200,800 vanished from my account. The Colombian roast I'd finally allowed myself to buy tasted like liberation. At 10:47 a.m. sharp, my phone rang. Isabella. Her name lit up my screen like a hazard sign. Dennis, she said curtly, skipping any pretense of politeness. I need you to go pick up my parents from the airport. Their flight from Portland lands at 2. I set my cup down gently, watching the steam rise. Did you forget our conversation yesterday? I don't have time for whatever that was, she replied, brushing me off like I was an unruly employee. Let's focus on the practical. They need a ride, and you're the only one available. The sheer gall was breathtaking. Not even 24 hours since she made it crystal clear I wasn't welcome for Christmas. And now, I was supposed to chauffeur her elitist parents across town. You're asking me because that's what family does, she snapped. They help each other. Her voice grew colder. And let's be honest, Dennis, you're no threat to me. You're not in my league. So just do what you're told and pick them up. There it was, an insult dressed as an order. I kept my tone even. What airline? Alaska, flight 447. They'll be at Carousel 3. And Dennis, she added, that signature sneer. Please, wear something respectable. That blue button, up from Michael's graduation. Maybe. They notice things like that. The click. She hung up without a thank you. I stared at the blank screen, then up at the clock over the sink. 10:52 a.m. Plenty of time. I poured another cup of coffee, added an extra spoonful of sugar, and flipped open the crossword puzzle from yesterday's newspaper. Still unfinished. 7, across, delaying satisfaction. 12 letters. The answer would come. Part 6, the airport lesson, at 10:15 p.m. I was not at the airport. Instead, I was exactly where I wanted to be. Back in my favorite armchair, with a fresh mug of Earl Grey, and the latest issue of the Spokane Review. The crossword from yesterday lay completed on the table. The clue had been postponement. My phone buzzed. Isabella. I let it ring. The golden sun poured into my quiet living room, warming the same walls that had witnessed years of sacrifice and quiet resentment. But this silence, it wasn't lonely, it was chosen. By 2047, another message. Dead, where are you? My parents are waiting. I didn't open it. I just turned the phone face down and continued reading the sports section. The Seahawks had lost again. Some things, at least, were consistent. 3 more calls came by 3:30. I brewed another pot of tea and even organized the junk drawer. It's remarkable how much time you find when you stop being at everyone else's beck and call. At 3:45, a call from a new number came in. I recognized the area code. Probably one of her parents, borrowing a stranger's phone at the airport. Let it ring. Outside, I saw my neighbor putting up Christmas lights with his kids, chasing each other through the yard. That's what normal families looked like. No screaming, no guilt tripping, no manipulation, just joy. By 4:15, the calls came nonstop. My phone buzzed like a dying wasp. Isabella, the unknown number. Back and forth. I unplugged the landline. Then I turned my cell off completely. The silence was exquisite. For dinner, I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich with tomato soup. The kind of comfort meal I hadn't indulged in for years. The cheese melted perfectly, and the soup warmed me from the inside out. Outside, the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long, soft shadows across my backyard. Somewhere in town, 3 very unpleasant people were probably standing curbside, furious and confused, wondering how their help had dared to stand them up. The thought made the sandwich taste even better. By 5:00 p.m., I'd finished dinner, loaded the dishwasher, and sat down to choose a movie. The evening stretched in front of me like a blank canvas, free of emergency phone calls or last-minute errands. Just as I reached for the remote, the front door rattled under a barrage of fists. Not knocking, pounding, aggressive, entitled. I set my tea down and moved toward the sound, calmly. I already knew who was on the other side. The pounding intensified. Through the peephole, I saw 3 silhouettes clustered on my porch, vibrating with rage. I opened the door. Cody Jenkins shoved his face close to mine. "Are you out of your goddamn mind?" he barked, barging into my home uninvited. We waited at that airport for over 3 hours. His wife, Catherine, followed. Her usually immaculate hair was frizzy, her scowl sharp. "This kind of behavior is disgraceful," she snapped. "From someone your age. It's completely unacceptable." Isabella brought up the rear, disheveled, her lipstick smudged. "You humiliated us," she hissed. "They had to take a taxi. Do you even realize what you've done?" I raised my hand. "Get out of my house." The room fell silent. "You don't get to make demands." Cody spat. "Not after today." "This is my home," I said, voice even, "and I want you out. Now." Catherine stepped forward, dripping with superiority. "Dennis, you clearly don't grasp how serious a mistake you've made. My husband knows everyone worth knowing in Spokane. You don't treat people like us this way." I stared her down. This wasn't a mistake. It was a lesson about humility, about respect. Isabella's jaw dropped. "A lesson from you. Who do you think you are?" "I'm someone who finally stopped letting you use me," I said, moving aside and holding the door open. The lesson is over. Time to go. Cody's face darkened. He jabbed a finger toward my chest, but stopped short of touching me. You have no idea who you're messing with. He growled. I've been in this town longer than you've been alive. I have connections. People who make sure you regret this. Is that a threat? I asked. It's a promise, he said quietly. Leaving an older couple stranded during the holidays. You don't get to do that without consequences. Catherine added, with a cold smile. You'll see, actions have consequences, Dennis. And yours will be public. Isabella tugged on her father's sleeve. Let's just leave. He's not worth it. They walked out, grumbling and snapping at each other like a pack of angry dogs. At the threshold, Cody turned back. You'll regret this, he said. I closed the door in his face and turned the lock. The house felt noticeably lighter without them, as if a weight had lifted. But their words still echoed. Consequences. Public. Connections. I sat back down and finished my tea. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt something new. A flicker of unease, maybe, but it was drowned out by something else. Resolve. 3 days later, I was drinking my morning coffee, scanning the Spokane Review, when I saw something that made my blood freeze. Page 3. My face. An old headshot from my business website stared back at me, beside a headline that read, Local man strands elderly couple during holiday travel. I blinked. Read it again. The story unfolded below in cold, precise language. Cody and Catherine Jenkins, visiting their daughter Isabella Flores for the holidays, were abandoned at Spokane International Airport on Sunday by relative Dennis Flores, who failed to arrive for a scheduled pickup. The couple, both nearing retirement age, endured hours of waiting as a winter storm advisory swept through the area. Winter storm. It had been 52 degrees and clear. We were shocked, said Cody Jenkins, a retired bank executive. We tried to call repeatedly, but Dennis ignored every message. In the end, we were forced to hire a taxi under dangerous conditions. At our age, that kind of behavior isn't just rude, it's reckless. The article went on to quote family insiders who questioned my mental state and described recent behavioral concerns. I sat still, the mug warm in my hands. My photo stared back at me in grainy grayscale, reduced to a headline, a caricature, a public scandal. So, this was the next move in their game. I placed the paper down gently. I wasn't worried. I was just getting started. Cody's version of the story painted him and Catherine as blameless victims, targets of an unpredictable old man who'd suddenly snapped. Not a word about the Christmas dinner snub, no mention of Isabella's entitled expectations, or the years I'd quietly carried their financial burdens. According to the article, I was the unstable villain who abandoned elderly tourists in a fictional snowstorm. I set my coffee down and read the piece again, slower this time, then a third time. The byline, Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. I didn't know her, but I recognized the tactic. Cody had leveraged his connections, calling in favors, to get this article placed exactly where it would have the most impact. Local lifestyle section, a soapbox for Spokane's social elite. It was cunning, ruthless, effective. For the first time since this all began, I felt something unexpected: respect. Not affection, not forgiveness, but a grudging admiration. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a strategic offensive. They understood the rules of local reputation. In a city like Spokane, public opinion is currency. One well-positioned article could erase decades of credibility. They'd made their move. Now it was my turn. I folded the paper carefully, like evidence, and placed it aside. My brain kicked into the same high, functioning gear that had built my business from the ground up. This wasn't about airport rides or holiday dinners anymore. This was about winning. I opened my laptop and began searching names: Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins, Isabella Flores. Everything they'd made public was fair game now. Photos, posts, associations, patterns of behavior. Social media tabs filled my screen. Cody's LinkedIn revealed a past in banking, community leadership roles, country club affiliations, an image built on trust and influence, all vulnerable to scandal. Catherine's Instagram was a gallery of curated elegance: brunches, vacations, designer bags, charity events. Her entire online persona screamed privilege funded by someone else's wallet. Isabella's Facebook was less refined, more honest. Photos of the house I'd helped buy, posts about war kitchen, with granite counters I paid for, restaurant check-ins during months I'd covered their utilities. Just last week, she'd posted, "Can't wait to host Christmas dinner with family." Family I wasn't invited to. The most revealing clue came from Michael's LinkedIn. His recent activity showed a new connection: Patricia Morrison, the same editor who'd penned the Hatchet Job. I did some quick digging and found 3 mutual connections between Cody and her editor. The article hadn't just appeared. It had been orchestrated. They underestimated me. That was their first mistake. They went public. That was their second. And they left a detailed trail of their hypocrisy online. That was their third. I opened a blank document and began compiling my own story. Not a counterattack, something better: proof, receipts, statements, checks. The down payment were $47,000 from a home equity loan. Kitchen upgrades to $18,000. Mortgage under $68,000 in payments over 5 years. All totaled, more than $250,000. More than I'd spent on myself in a decade. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Probably Isabella. I didn't answer. I just kept organizing. By nightfall, I had a full dossier. Bank records, social media screenshots, even the article, now annotated with a red pen. 12 copies of everything. One for each dinner guest they were expecting on Christmas Eve. December 24, a different kind of Christmas. Christmas Eve arrived cold and overcast. Spokane in winter, perfect for reflection, or in my case, revelation. I sorted the documents into 12 neat packets. Evidence, highlighted in yellow. Mortgage payments, renovation bills, social media brags, photos of things they never paid for. The article sat on top of each pile, annotated with one word: lie. I dressed in my best suit. Navy blue, the one I wore to Maria's funeral. Tonight, it had a different purpose. Not mourning, transformation. By 16:30 p.m., I was parked across from their glowing home in Kendall Yards, watching silhouettes behind frosted glass. 12 people laughing, dining, surrounded by the trappings of a lifestyle I'd funded. At 1645, I crossed the street. The front door was unlocked. Of course. Safe neighborhood, Isabella always said. I stepped inside, unnoticed, until I walked into the dining room. Conversation stopped. Forks paused mid-air. I could feel the temperature drop by degrees. "Good evening," I said, placing my briefcase on the marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind if I join the festivities." Isabella stood first. "Dennis, this is not the time or place." "Actually," I said, opening my briefcase, "it's the perfect time." I began handing out document packets. "Inside, you'll find 5 years of financial support," I said calmly. "Down payment, mortgage, renovations, luxury purchases, all funded by me." A guest flipped through a bank statement. "Is this real?" Another shook her head. "Isabella, you never said." "We didn't ask him for this," Isabella said, voice rising. "He offered." I pulled out the newspaper. "You asked for a lot. And when I said no, you painted me as dangerous and erratic in the Spokane Review." The guests read in silence, comparing the article to my handwritten notes. Then looking back at Isabella and Cody. The mood was shifting, uneasy, skeptical. "Mr. Jenkins," I said, pointing to Cody. "The man who used his influence to plant that article, conveniently leaving out that I paid for this house." Someone at the table turned to him. "Is that true?" I answered before he could. The weather on that so-called stranded tourist day, 52 degrees and sunny. Isabella's parents weren't helpless. They were guests at a Christmas dinner I was banned from. Catherine tried to speak. "You weren't banned." "No." I held up my phone. "Then explain this." A screenshot of Isabella's post glad. "Dennis won't be there. His food and conversation aren't what my parents are used to." The silence was brutal. Finally, an older woman at the table spoke. "Catherine, that's disgusting." Cody tried to pivot. "He's not well. This is mental decline." "Mental decline?" I laughed. "That's what you tell people after stealing 200,000 from them and getting caught." I turned to Michael. "Your wife and her parents lied. They excluded me, used me, and when I stopped letting them, they tried to ruin me." Michael said nothing, just stared at the evidence with haunted eyes. I placed the final newspaper copy on the table. "You wanted to shape the narrative. Now I'm telling the real story." And with that, I packed my briefcase, straightened my tie and left. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices raised. Accusations flew. The truth had detonated. And the fallout had only begun. It was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had in years. March, the consequences arrive. The letter arrived by certified mail. Thick envelope. Legal language. Final notice. 3 months delinquent. Foreclosure imminent. Michael and Isabella's fantasy was crashing down, and this time I wasn't part of the cleanup crew. They called, texted, begged. I blocked them. I'd spent years giving. I was done. Eventually, Michael came in person. He looked hollowed out. Expensive suit, worn expression, voice tentative. "Dad," he said at my door. "We need to talk." I let him in. He scanned my house, now freshly painted and warmly furnished. The place looked different when the money stayed home. Nice place, he muttered. What happens when you stop bleeding cash to ungrateful people? I replied. He sat carefully, like he didn't quite belong anymore. I'm sorry, he said. About everything. The dinner, the article, Isabella. I should have stood up for you. Wes, I said simply. You should have. He nodded, ashamed. The house, he said. It's in foreclosure. I know. We can't make the payments without my money, I asked. That's what this is about. He looked broken. I don't know what to do. You'll figure it out, I said. Just like I figured out how to celebrate Christmas alone, while my son chose status over family. His eyes filled with tears. I've lost you. No, I said. You gave me away. There's a difference. Can you ever forgive me? I already have, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were. It doesn't mean pretending this never happened. He looked at me with a sliver of hope. So what does it mean? I walked to the mantel and picked up a photo. Me with Rosa and her family, Easter dinner. Real smiles, real warmth. It means if you want a relationship with me, I said, you'll have to rebuild it. With honesty. With respect. Not with handouts. Not with shame. And the next time someone tries to exclude me, I expect you to remember who's really family. He gave a slow nod, the weight of realization finally sinking in. Maybe for the first time in his life, he understood. Respect isn't something owed, it's something earned. Quietly, he asked, so the house, it's not your concern anymore. I sat back down in my chair, feeling lighter than I had in years. No, Michael, it's not. You're a grown man. Handle it like one. Find work that covers your responsibilities. Sell the house if you have to. Stop expecting other people to foot the bill for the life you can't afford. He didn't argue. Just stood, a little taller than when he'd come in. His voice was steadier, too. You're right, about everything. I know, I said. He made his way to the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. Dade, when you showed up at Christmas and told the truth like that. I didn't show it, but I was proud of you. I was shocked and embarrassed, yeah, but proud. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Good, that means you might still turn out all right. He nodded once more and stepped outside. After he left, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey and walked out to the back porch. The late March air was cool, but gentle. The early signs of spring just beginning to show. Buds on the trees, birds testing the air again. In a few months, I'd turn 63. Maria had been gone 8 years. And I'd spent 5 of them, letting myself be walked over, giving everything to people who only knew how to take. That was over now. My phone buzzed. A text from Rosa. Dinner on Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects. I grinned and replied, wouldn't miss it. Turns out, family isn't just blood. It's who invites you in and makes space for you at the table. It's who wants you around when no one's keeping score. Everything else. That's just a stage play with overpriced tickets. And I was done being the guy standing in the wings, waiting to be acknowledged. The whiskey tasted like something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. And the road ahead looked as clear and promising as I was willing to make it.